Welcome to the College Football Show on the Sports Talkline Network, where we talk sport 24/7, 365. Last week, I went solo, and it was a short show. I was nervous. I was scared. But this week, I'm welcome back my co-host, Nate Dowdy from No Remorse Sports. Now, Nate, the people have spoken, and they've given you your own show. What's going on there?
Well, first and foremost, we're trying several things out. If you didn't notice, I got a different setup going right now. So we're aiming for the big times first and foremost. Second of all, I'm going to spoil the viewers with segments not 1 day a week, not 2 days a week, not 3 days a week, 5 days a week. They're going to get segments from me on the most hard-hitting topics, and you're going to want to tune in to what I have to say about Drew Brees and how that all connects to Colin Kaepernick.
Yes, hasn't that been a show this week? Just while we're on the subject, we just touched base on it. Look, I want everyone out there to make sure you're being safe. Whatever it is that you're doing, whether you are protesting peacefully, whether you're still sick with the virus, whatever you're doing out there, folks, stay safe. Go check in on your neighbors, check in on your friends, and make sure you're looking after each other out there. Doesn't matter what you're doing, do it safely, okay? But look, on today's show, we've got a fair few topics that we need to get through. We're going to talk about JT Daniels joining Georgia and making Georgia a powerhouse going forward. We're going to talk about Justyn Ross's injury and what that means for Clemson in 2020. And we're going to talk about schools returning this week and what that looks like. And we're going to talk about our top four this year and why they differ, because I'm sure the two of us have got some very differing opinions on that. But let's jump straight into Georgia. Now, I wrote an article during the week about Jamie Newman coming across from Wake Forest to Georgia. Now, Georgia's always been a very run-first offense. But with Jamie Newman there from Wake Forest, they will now be a pass-first offense. Newman was strong last year, but was very strong in 2018. They've also signed JT Daniels now, and JT Daniels comes across from USC. So the way I see this going down is Jamie Newman starts in 2020. He then joins the NFL. JT Daniels comes across, and he starts in 2021. They've also signed a five-star out of Georgia called Brock Vandagriff. Vandagriff will be their starting quarterback in 2022. Nate, are Georgia setting themselves up for somewhat of a dynasty?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The first program that comes to mind when you say those kind of quarterbacks' name is Oklahoma, because they had an embarrassment of riches in the quarterback position, tagging from Baker Mayfield, getting a transfer from Kyler Murray, then getting a transfer from Jalen Hurts. So they've had an embarrassment amount of riches at the position. What I'm going to be interested in seeing is at a prospect, Jamie Newman reminds me a lot of a poor man's Cam Newton in a lot of ways. But consider this, in the college game, Cam Newton was the Heisman winner in his token year that he started. Now, do I see the same thing? But he does all the same things Cam Newton does well, just not as well. I don't believe he's quite as big or as strong as Cam Newton. Faster runner, but he doesn't necessarily have the cannon Cam Newton has. At the same time, I think this makes Georgia very competitive. Yeah. Do I think they're the front runners in the SEC East? Maybe not.
Yeah, look, I think they're a front runner to actually win the SEC. To be honest with you, they're going to keep most of their defense intact, and I think having three strong quarterbacks going forward, that they might not necessarily get there this year, but certainly the next couple of seasons. I think LSU falling off the bandwagon a bit, and I think Alabama not being so well structured. I think Georgia certainly have the needs to go forward, and I certainly think they'll be certainly a top four team this year, and if not going all the way. My other question is, which we didn't actually talk about earlier in the show, is there such thing these days about getting a quarterback out of high school and training him for 4 years and keeping him? Or is it too easy these days to chop and change and just transfer guys here and there and just get someone else?
Well, it depends on the individual. I mean, a lot of these guys, they have to make a big decision at 18. Then all of a sudden at 18, maybe the program isn't what you were trying to be. Maybe the coach was just a great salesman to all sorts of people at your position. one thing talking about earlier with JT Daniels, I'm going to be interested. This guy is a California guy, born and bred, grew up in Orange County, went to go play at SC. They don't particularly take well to Californians playing in the Bible Belt. They view you as kind of an outsider. That's why you see a lot of these athletes staying close to home. So if I do have questions about any of these guys, it's JT Daniels. He's going into a completely different culture in Georgia than he was at SC as in the way he grew up. He's going to be an outsider for the first time in his life. And that's going to be the interesting to see how they handle that development.
Yeah, I think that's going to be hard for him, but I think getting a chance to sit behind Newman for at least a season is going to sort of really help him going forward. So I think having that there and being in a good system too, I think Georgia's, as we've seen the last couple of years, they've been very run first, but they had DeAndre Swift, and they won't have Swift now. So I think having that there is certainly going to help them being a more pass-heavy offense. So talking about pass-heavy offenses, the Clemson Tigers have suffered a huge injury news during the week. Their wide receiver, Justyn Ross, has had a spinal injury. Now, he's had 2 fused discs in his back. Now, this had surgery on Friday, and this will keep him out for the full 2020 season. Now, they're likely to go through the ACC and win every game, which their schedule is not that strong there. They've got a few stronger teams coming up, like the Hurricanes and maybe Virginia Tech, but they're not really going to be challenged until the Final Four if they go that far. How does this affect them going forward? I understand they've got Sunshine Lawrence as their quarterback, and they've still got the best running back in the game in Travis Etienne, but having no one on the outside to throw the football to, where does this leave them? Are they actually going to make the Final Four, or will Justyn Ross's injury not really affect them that much?
I think it's going to affect them deeper into the season, probably presumably as they play in the ACC championship game and probably a bowl game down the line. However, the guy they gotten back at Justyn Ross is another 4-star talent. So it's at the end of the day, he's going to be a true sophomore. And it's going to be the thing about these great programs. You have one guy step down and you have another guy able to replace him like that. So it could be easily one of those situations. But at the same time, Justyn Ross, I thought he was the best of the 2 receivers they had last year. I actually thought he was a stronger pro prospect than T. Higgins.
Well, that's just absolute utter trash. So, no, that's not right.
No. You've been drinking Van's Kool-Aid for too long. He's got you on the T. Higgins train.
I just drafted T. Higgins this morning in a fantasy draft, so hopefully he's strong this year with my boy out of LSU. So we'll see what happens.
Man, you did a fantasy draft this early?
Oh, we've had a couple already. Yeah, there's a couple of leagues I'm in where guys we drafted the week after the draft. Man, it's insane. Yeah.
Man, I don't touch a fantasy draft until at least the end of training camp or the last preseason game.
They're my thoughts exactly. I'm in a few too many leagues. I won't give you numbers, but it's above 10 and under 15, so just bear with me. But a few of my leagues drafted early, and I'm concerned because there's injuries, there's missing out on training camp, there's all this stuff with the virus now, but they've got leagues still drafting. It's backwards, man. It's backwards.
You got to set those boys straight.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, talking about schools returning and the virus, it looks as if most of the schools that are going to return on Monday, which I believe is the 8th. So from reading a few articles during the week and listening to a few awesome shows out there, it looks like most of the schools are going to return on Monday. So that gives us 2 more days. The way I see this going down is they're going to sort of return in stages. Everyone needs to be tested as soon as they return to the facility for the first time. You're looking at probably bringing in the offense first and then the defense a day or 2 after that, depending how long it actually takes to test everyone and get those results back. It means having smaller groups together on the field, smaller groups in the weights room, smaller groups in schools, smaller groups everywhere, really. So people who tend to room together, they'll be allowed to live together and come into the team together. And also, there's going to be a certain. Obviously, you've got to test all the staff too, or everyone that comes into the facility. If you're sick, you're going to have to sit out for your 2 weeks, and then everyone that you've been in contact with as well. So I believe at the moment they're still going to do the nasal swab, which must be a fantastic feeling having it all the way up here. But I think at the moment that's still the best way to actually test you. So until they can find some other way, whether it's through the ear or whatever, that's going to be the way forward. So there's going to be a few challenges, obviously, with this. You're going to have to hire more staff to wipe down all the machines. It's trial and error, really, because no one knows what this virus is going to do. So, Nate, how do you see schools being able to open and being able to have a proper season with so much else going on around us?
Man, first and foremost, just be glad it's not done like a colonoscopy. Let's put it that way. Just be thankful for the small things in life, the way you're tested. So I'll take that win any day of the week instead of the going in the other way. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because colleges at this time already have had their spring games. They've had their spring training. That's a big part of the year. So, and having all these guys come together in smaller groups, it's just going to be taking coaching to a different level. Whereas a lot of people can rely strictly on talent, and that will still be the case in certain degrees because teams will play smash games early in the season. But it's going to be interesting to see how a lot of those early tough games, how teams are prepared. So I think that's really going to come down to how well coaches are going to be able to manage these things.
I think there's going to be a lot more sort of help from like your assistant OC, your assistant DC, coaches on the fringe that wouldn't necessarily have much of a say back in the past would certainly be having more of a say now, because you'd be taking individual groups of like 5 or 6 and looking after them rather than just your head coach looking after everything. So I think all your team doctors, everyone in the facility is going to have a role to play now. And there's going to be a lot more, there's not going to be as many chances to sort of work out too, especially as a huge group. So I think there's going to be a lot more changes happening as it goes through, because this is trial and error. No one actually knows exactly what's going to happen. So it'll be very interesting to see, like over here in Australia at the moment, our rugby league has just started back up, and we're testing through the ear. So you use the thermometer, you test through the ear. If your temperature is above a certain height, then you can't go on the field. However, most people warm up on the field wearing headphones, don't they? So the headphones are actually causing your ears to be hotter. So they're testing in the ear, they're reading high, but they're not actually sick. There was a game last night where 6 guys tested high before the game, took off their headphones, they cooled it down a bit, tested again, they're okay. But all that's trial and error, like no one knows. So it's going to be a matter of just sort of having a week or 2 in there. I believe Oklahoma State, I think it is, have said they're going to come back in 2 weeks' time. So I think they're going to let everyone else go out and stuff it all up first and then come back.
Yeah, well, they had a player test positive for coronavirus.
Yeah, and I believe that there was 3 more from Alabama too.
Oh, man, just don't be sending those players overboard. And they should just say, like, you have a designated player that's hurt. You should go send them to LSU to go infect the other players, kind of a thing. You know, just take that one guy, infect them. And, you know, if you really want to get this scholarship, you're going to have to earn it.
You're going to have to earn it. Yeah. Do it.
Be a little kamikaze for the Alabama Crimson Tide or whoever.
That'll be one of your stories for the dark side of sport.
Yeah, right. We made a player eat a bat so he can infect himself. And so he went and, you know, rolled around, you know, went to go play a game of Twister. Twister's went to go play a game of Twister with the Florida Gators, and then all of a sudden half their team was infected.
I think everything's going to look very, very different as the season starts. If we can get, I think the first game was supposed to be in Ireland. It was Navy and Notre Dame. I think that was the last week in August. So I don't think that game goes ahead. But what preseason looks like, if anything at all, obviously training will still go ahead. But as you were saying earlier, the need to have guys train or to have guys have full contact in practice, do you then have to use your first game or two of the season as your actual practices?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I already know a team like Alabama is going to have a way. They're going to find a way to have their team prepared, unlike any other team. Nick Saban, is one of the great leaders in all of college sports in general. So that's where it's really going to come down to. I mean, you take your elite programs with elite coaching. Teams like Clemson, they're going to come out prepared, and also it helps that they play in the ACC, so they're not going to.
They're against no one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That actually brings us into our next topic. So we're going to name our Final Four here on the show, and I know we're a good 8 months out from the Final Four, but we're going to throw it on the line, and this is going to be our Final Four. So look, I want to go one team each. I think that's probably the fairest way to do this. So I'm going to go first, and I'm going to say Georgia. I'm going to say Georgia comes out of the SEC as the winner. I think only one team comes out of the SEC, and that is Georgia. I think Bama loses a game throughout the season to someone, and then Bama plays Georgia in the SEC title game, and Georgia wins and goes through, and Alabama ends up with 2 losses and misses the Final Four for the first time in years.
Okay, I hear you. I might be a little bit of a spoiler for you, but I'm going to save that to a little bit right now. I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit right now, and I'm going to take Clemson. And the reason being, I think they have the easiest chance of going undefeated. They have several players returning. Their most important players returning, that is, with particularly with Trevor Lawrence. And I think once you have a dominating quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, he's always going to put you in a position to be in the playoffs. So I don't see this year being any different from his first 2 years. I'm taking Clemson for sure.
Well, I'm actually going to say that they miss out. I'm going to say no team from the ACC goes in at all. I'm going to say, obviously, their schedule is going to be easy. It always is. But I think the Hurricanes are getting stronger. I think Virginia Tech's getting stronger. And there was someone else I can't think of at the moment. They're getting stronger too. So I think they probably go through undefeated. But I think they have a few close games. And I think they probably only win by a touchdown here or there. So I think they're going to get marked down a bit because their schedule is so easy. So I'm going to say no to Clemson. And my second team is actually going to be Ohio State. I think the Buckeyes have been really strong there or thereabouts the last couple of years. They've obviously lost their quarterback this year, and they've also lost J.K. Dobbins too. But I think the way they've built around what they currently have, they've got a strong matchup against Oregon. I think it's early September, so that'll be very interesting. But I see Ohio State going through. So they're my other team. Who you got for number 2, Nate?
I'll have to agree with you here. I have Ohio State as well. I think they have excellent quarterback play. Actually, a guy who started at Georgia, then transferred to Ohio State. I really think if you're going to I take the teams that have great quarterback play. I think those are the teams that you see are going to make the big push into the playoffs. They have some great prospects in the secondary, replacing the guys they sent to the NFL. So I'm expecting more of the same play. I expect Ohio State to be back competing again.
Very nice. So I think my third team is going to be Oklahoma. The way Lincoln Riley sets that team up and the way they've sort of done the last couple of years, they've had 2 Heisman Trophy winners almost back-to-back, obviously, without Burrow last year. I think they're on the cusp, and I think they're very close to sort of being in that Final Four. They were there or thereabouts last year, the year before, but I think that they just need that little bit of an extra push to go. So I think Oklahoma is my third team.
Yeah, Oklahoma, I'd be tempted to take them too because they have great prospects. The only thing I'm going to ding them on, and I might be wrong here, is the quarterback battle they have over there is between a redshirted freshman and a true freshman. Now, the true freshman they have coming in is, 5-star recruit. He's the guy they're all talking about. He looks a little like a Sinbad a little bit. But I'm not going to take that much of a gamble on a freshman quarterback, and particularly because when they've played Texas the last few years, those games have been extremely competitive. I'm not so sure they can pull out a win over Texas this year, and I think playing in the Big 12, I don't think they value the strength and schedule. So at the very best, you're going to have to be a one-loss team in that conference to even compete for the playoffs. So I'm going to do some thinking here. Who's my third team? Because I know what my fourth team is here. I'm going to go. I got a Big 12. I got a Big 10 team. I got an ACC team. I'm going to go with Alabama. I'm going to go with Alabama. I think they're too well coached right now, and they're always in the conversation, whether you like it or not. I can easily see two teams from the SEC getting in somehow.
Very nice. Look, I think there's only the one SEC team. So I've currently got Georgia, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. I'm going to throw in another dark horse here, and I'm going to say Penn State.
Okay.
Penn State is my fourth team. This is a very, very dark outsider. A couple of years back, they're a strong team. I think they might have finished 11-1 or 10-2 a couple of years back, and we're sort of on the cusp. I think they finished about 6 that year. Last year, that they were ordinary. They had a few tight losses, but I think going forward, they're going to be a lot stronger. They're starting to put things into place. I like to think of last year as a bit of a down year, and I know you're a big Penn State fan on the side, but I think they're my final four. So I've got Oklahoma, Ohio State, Penn State, and Georgia. And Georgia to go through to win it all.
Okay, if you want to talk dark horses, and this is the dark horse I've been talking about here, and this dark horse is black as the night. I'm going with the Florida Gators. I expect them to win the ACC East, and I could easily see them winning the SEC East, and I could see them possibly winning the SEC. They have a lot of good players on that defense that are returning, and on top of it, I'm a big fan of Kyle Trask. I think he's a guy you have to keep your eye on having a big year. I expect a big year from him, and I got the dark horse Florida Gators in the Final Four.
Good pick. So where do they fall? They finish fourth. They travel to Georgia or something. Like where do you see them actually? Do you see them going all the way?
No, I don't see them going all the way. I just don't see they have that kind of depth. And when you match them up against a team like, let's say if they match up with Clemson, I just don't like that matchup for them. I think if you get in, because when you get to the playoffs, I think it comes down to quarterbacks. I'm a big fan of Kyle Trask, but I don't think if you're going to match him up with against a Trevor Lawrence, I take Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, very nice. That was a dark horse, Nate. I'm impressed. Very nice. So my final four: Penn State, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Ohio State. And I see Georgia going all the way. Nate, are your final four?
Okay, I got my final four. I said I had Clemson, Ohio State. I said I had Alabama, and I had Florida. Gosh, out of that group, I have to favor Clemson. I just do. I'm just such a fan of Trevor Lawrence. And if you saw the way he played last year in that playoff game, in both playoff games, I mean, he literally willed his team back from behind to beat Ohio State. And he had them in the early lead against an all-time great in LSU. I don't see him facing an all-time great team like he did last year. So I'm leaning Clemson all the way. I know that's a popular pick, but shove it.
Yeah, I just think that of the four I picked, those four weren't in the Final Four last year. And since we've had a Final Four going for the last 5 or 6 years, at least two teams have repeated each year. So I can't see my Final Four getting in there without two of the teams that were obviously in there last year. I just think that Alabama's falling off the perch a bit. LSU certainly won't be there. Clemson's had issues off the field and on the field. I just don't think Trevor Lawrence is in such a good spot, but he's going to go number one overall, even if he sits out the whole year. So I think it's going to get to a stage in week 8 or 9 or 10 where if they're not in it to win it all, I see them just maybe allowing him to sort of really, really take it easy, because it doesn't really matter for him going forward, because he will always finish number one. So I'm just worried that if they lose a game or they have a few tight games and they're not automatically ranked number one, that they're going to allow him to just sort of go off and do his own thing.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because we completely didn't mention any teams from the Pac-12 last year, and Utah was an interesting team the year before because they were in first place all that year, and until it came down to playing Oregon for the championship game. Now you take away Oregon's quarterback. God, what's his name? I'm flubbing it right now. Who got drafted by the Chargers?
Herbert.
Oh yeah, Justin Herbert. Yeah, thank you. I don't know why I forgot his name. Take away Justin Herbert, but also Utah lost a lot of talent on that side of the ball, the defensive side of the football, to the draft. But also on top of that, they just suspended their offensive coordinator for sending a text back in 2013.
Right.
So it's going to be. I'm trying. What are other dark horses that you can think of?
I think Texas actually. I think Texas. The Longhorns. I think the SEC this year is certainly a lot more open. I don't think LSU certainly not going to have the side they had last year. Bama's exactly the same. I think they're kind of not in a rebuilding phase, but they're not going to be as strong as they were. So I think this gives teams around them the chance to be better. Georgia, as you said, the Gators. I think Texas Longhorns. There's certainly going to be a lot of teams in the SEC. We all know that the SEC is the best conference, but I think there's certainly going to be a lot more open this year. There's not going to be your Bamas going through undefeated or your LSU the same. I think the SEC is certainly going to. If they could have three teams out of the SEC, I'm sure they would.
Okay, what do you think about? Do you think Auburn's in play? They just they have Cam Newton's brother actually there to compete. Do you think he actually ends up starting?
Well, I think he starts a game over Cam Newton. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. No.
Yeah, but I'm a big fan of Bo Nix. I think he's really good. He's been strong the last year or two. I enjoy watching him out there. I wrote a good article on him halfway through last year, I think it was, and I like what the kid does on the field. But I also see Cam Newton's brother. I can't actually remember his name now, but he's more likely to get preferential treatment because of who he is. So if he performs on the field at 80%, he's likely to get the start over Bo Nix.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I know Auburn really likes Bo Nix. But going back to other dark horses, I mean, could you see a team that's always competitive? I was almost going to go Wisconsin here, but is this a year where Michigan takes the jump forward and competes with Ohio State?
No.
No? Yeah, I don't think so either.
No. No. Look, I want Michigan to do well. I think they've got such a storied history and they're so strong in the community and in the township and the city, and the football is life down there. And I think the fans of them these days are struggling to remember how good they once were. And I think they were once awesome. But it's been so long since they were that strong. I think there could be maybe an independent, maybe Notre Dame. Maybe I do not like the Fighting Irish at all. If I was them, I'd be trying to be in the Pac-12 or the SEC or something. But they want to go independent, and have games against nobody teams. I just think that if you're as strong as you say you are, go join a strong conference and show us.
Right, exactly. But they want that extra element of protection. And we all saw the last time that they were deemed relevant, they got taken down by an Alabama.
They were destroyed. I remember sending out several tweets that week saying, why? Like, why were they fourth for? That was the year they finished fourth and Penn State was fifth. And so I think they pushed Penn State out. And Penn State would have stuck up a much more of a fight. And they just weren't there. And like every game they won all year, they were just winning games. They weren't destroying their opposition. So
right. I also remember you talking about Oregon as a potential dark horse. What do you think about them?
I just like Oregon. I've always sort of been a fan of the way they play in the Pac-12. I just think that they've certainly. I'm a fan of Ducks. What can I say? I watched the Mighty Ducks growing up. Man, I love it. I think I always liked Herbert too. So I think having sort of studied Herbert a bit over the years, I kind of got into their Oregon style of football, and it's very different to the SEC. But the Pac-12 is a bit different, and they call it the Pac-12 after dark. So most of the games I get over here, I can watch the Pac-12 games because they're on after the others. So I tend to get a bit more Pac-12 over here, which is good. And so I enjoy the way Oregon goes about what they do, and I just think they're certainly they'll finish top 10, I think, but they're certainly not going to push for that sort of top 4 to 6.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't see any team from the Pac-12 really making that push, because if you lose, the reality of the playoff is if you lose 2 games, you're out of contention, unless you better be like have the Alabama legacy behind you, because they're they're dying to have Alabama in there. So
exactly. I think even if Bama lose if Bama lose during the season to an A&M or whatever, and then they lose the SEC game to Georgia, I still see Alabama getting in because they are that strong. I think they always talk about strength of schedule and this, that, and the other, but they don't want Oregon, Notre Dame, and Penn State. They don't want smaller teams in there. They want your Bamas in there. They want the big teams who are going to bring fans to games that have those huge TV audiences. As much as that they say they don't want it, they do.
Yeah, I mean that's just the nature of it. I mean they travel much better than let's say the Pac-12 would. So yeah, I'm just trying to search for other dark horses here. And actually, this is going to be a big reach. What about a team like a Texas A&M? With Jimbo Fisher still there, and I think this is going to be his 3rd year.
Yeah, I remember last year A&M had the hardest schedule of any team in the history of college football. They played 2 number 1 teams, or 3. They played 3 number 1 teams. So they played Clemson at the start of the year. They played Alabama when they were number 1 about 6 weeks in. And then they played LSU when they were number 1. So the first team ever to play 3 number 1 teams in a year. They went I think they went from memory 5-7 or something. But everyone they played was incredibly hard. They played a strong Auburn team at Auburn. They played Georgia in Georgia. They just had the hardest schedule I've ever seen. And so you get teams like Clemson that just walk their way through and destroy everyone who means nothing. And you've got A&M struggling every week and knowing they're not going to win, but still going out there and just fighting every week. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, and this still boggles me, that Jimbo Fisher left Florida State for Texas A&M for a way tougher job. I mean, the SEC West is the toughest conference in all of college football. And this dude goes and leaves to go take that challenge on. So, I mean, it is what it is.
How long has Jimbo been there for? Was he there when Johnny Manziel was there?
No, coach was when Manziel was there. God, he was. I'm forgetting his name now, but he is a black guy. Always wore his Oakleys.
Yes, that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. I know I got real specific there, but
yeah. Look, there's certainly a few teams who are sort of on the edge this year. I can't, like, if you're looking at more your independence, what about like a UCF? Do you think UCF can sort of bounce back, or like the year they had 2 years ago when technically they went undefeated and they called themselves national champions? Do you think that they're back in it?
No. UCF never should have been in the first place. I mean, the goal that you have to call yourself national champions, when there used to be that sort of a thing where you could legitimately call yourself a national champion without playing in it. SC technically got a national championship without playing in the de facto national championship game. They beat Michigan one year, and that was part of their first national championship reign. But even then, that shouldn't even really count. But now you have the playoffs in there specifically for the reason being you could name a de facto national champion without this any sort of an argument before, but yet they persist. Unfreaking believable.
Yeah, when I wrote this article a couple of weeks back about the top 20 that you and I touched on, and on the Wikipedia pages down the side, it's got national titles, and then national titles they think they won. So there's some teams that have got like 20 national titles they think they won.
Yeah,
they won 4. I went, no, that means you won 4. Like you haven't won that many.
Yeah, one of these days, because it's like the Ivy Leagues dominated way back then, and it's kind of like, okay, you won your national championships before 1902. Yeah. Okay, does that really count? It's like the same thing when you count people count championships before the Super Bowl era. It's kind of like, well, there was 8 teams in the league. It's like, do you really like the you talk to Browns fans, they're like quite happy with their history before the Super Bowl era. It's like, oh yeah, we were quite good. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
like, no one gives a shit.
No one cares, man. Exactly.
Yeah.
Very nice. Look, on that note, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Leave us a like, a comment, a rate, and review. Nate, tell the good people where they can find you and when they can find your show.
And you know what? I actually plugged in this time. I actually put my name right in there. You could follow me on Twitter at No Remorse Sports, no spaces. I gave it to you clean as it comes. Come check out my show Monday through Friday. I'm going to have daily segments. So tune in.
Very nice. That's where it is. All right, folks, stay safe out there, whatever it is that you're going to do. Don't forget to find us on Twitter at Spinksy NFL, just here. Whatever you're doing out there, guys, stay safe, look after each other, and don't do anything I wouldn't do. Hooroo.